how did traveling the world impact your life?
I just wished I could have done the traveling earlier, before I started teaching history classes. How much more effective would my teaching have been when I talked about the pyramids in Egypt if I had actually seen them? What I talked about then was what I could imagine it looked like, but that was nothing like the real thing. What an experience to get to go to Egypt. That was something I had always thought about, but never dreamed it would be possible. It's a strange sort of thing, but sometimes the things that you really want to do finally come to pass and you don't think it will. And I never seriously considered traveling. I didn't like the idea of flying. I just wouldn't fly. Even though my brother became a TWA pilot, my younger brother did. So when I went, after J.O. died, Mary Frances and Powell wanted me to come to Kansas City, and I told them I just couldn't fly up there. I was scared to fly. So I got on a bus and rode a bus to Kansas City, and that was quite an experience in itself. Buses were pretty good in those days, but they did stop, at every little crossing almost, and every outpost where people could get off and on. And after I married Glenn, he had traveled so much. First thing he wanted to do was travel. He had been to Europe many, many times, and he didn't want to go back to Europe. So the college, it was called Westart College at that time, here in Fort Smith, was sponsoring a trip to China not long after we were married. I'll have to go back and tell about where we got married later, but this is the second trip we took. Well, going to China is quite an experience, because especially in those days, and we actually had to fly to Japan before we flew to China, and our experience in Japan was wonderful. The reason we flew to Japan was because they didn't have any lights for night landing in Shanghai at that time. Shanghai being about the second largest city in the world at that time. Of course, they have a huge airport, new airport now, but this was a number of years ago. And so we got to spend the night in Tokyo. And then we went on to China, and it was quite a culture shock at first, but I did enjoy the trip. I got to see the Great Wall. I think that was Glenn's greatest experience. He said he had always dreamed about seeing the Great Wall, and we actually walked up on part of it, and of course not the whole thing. And we took the long route. Glenn was quite active. He liked to walk. He usually walked 5 miles a day at that time. And we walked and walked and walked, and you have to be very careful because the steps are different heights. And sometimes you have a big step and sometimes you have little steps. And you climb and you walk, but it is a wonderful experience. But to me, the best part of China was seeing the buried soldiers, as they call them, the terracotta soldiers. And I had read about that in magazines and articles and just thought what an amazing thing that was. Well, to actually see it was more than I even dreamed it could be. Just think about a person being buried and having thousands of nearly life-size figures buried with him, and that's just part of what's buried there. There are horses, figures of horses, and they're beautifully done, realistically done, and they're not all identical. There's different faces, different hairstyles. Not every one is different, but they have different styles. It's not just mass-produced, and by machinery or something. There's a human touch in each one. The trip to China was wonderful. It really was. And then we took a lot of other trips. And
What
they
was
were
your favorite
wonderful
one?
too.
What was your favorite one?
Favorite? I can't even tell you because I guess I would say it's wherever we were at that time.
Well, then, if you could choose one place that you could go to one more time, which one would it be?
I think I would go back to Israel because I saw so many things there that were interesting, and archaeologists have done so much in the last 25 years. It's totally different from what it was when we went there. And I would just like to see some of the other places. I have read lots of books and magazines and articles about the archaeology in Israel, and they can't put a spade in the ground anywhere there without digging up some relics or some bodies or something.
What do you remember about Israel?
What do I remember about it? Getting to go into the Golden Dome building, the mosque that's there where the temple was originally. That's all. That was a great privilege to get to do that. We had to take our shoes off, of course, to go in, which was fine, because they had beautiful oriental carpets all around the main part there. And everyone treated us real nicely while we were there. We weren't too much afraid. There was some fighting going on. We did walk down the Kidron Valley along by the wall there around the Temple Mount. And we saw some burned out cars where the Palestinians had burned some cars a few days before. And we understood that they had thrown rocks at people and things, but nothing bad happened to us, so we got out okay.